Okay, so right before we get into the video, I have to make this disclaimer. So, because of this mic and the way how it's oriented, it actually fell to the side where the logo should be facing me. When I was actually recording this video, and I just noticed that it kind of fell to the side. So there are some parts. It's not too much. It's probably like less than 5% of the time, like the audio gets cut off from my end. So I do apologize for that. I will put captions just to fill in like the stuff that got parted from my end. Yeah, and also the rest of this video, I was actually very generous. I just finished roughly cutting like all the silences in between. But I noticed that I dragged on for this conversation way more than it should have been. It was pretty insightful because like I've seen it. I do want to make some incremental things that I want to say because I noticed what this person was doing when I was having this sort of conversation with them, and I wasn't letting them like use their tactics, right? I don't know what kind of word I can associate with it, but what they're doing. But there's actually like a couple points that have yet to be made because we just kept going in circles. So if I seem to be frustrated, I think you can understand why this is, because prior to this conversation, I asked her like, "Are you ready to have in good faith?" Because we're actually supposed to have this formal debate, you know, because this is something that within our circle, it's been very problematic because it's absurd, from like easy to like very complex explanations from both sides pertaining about this topic. And they made it so clear that they did not want to have a formal debate. So when I decided to have a discussion with one of the main predominant preterist holders or whatever, they obviously argued in bad faith. So this goes to show, if somebody is not willing to talk in a formal debate over contrasting views, they just basically admitted defeat, that they cannot actually reason without using fallacious arguments and just trying to be malicious. So I think that's all I have to say for the beginning. So let's just get right into it.
I'll just tell the people what I believe. So yeah, I believe that all the Bible prophecies, like Matthew 24, Matthew 16, Revelations 20, Revelations 21, all the Bible prophecies were fulfilled by 70 AD. Yeah, that's it. Want me to give you my first passage, or you want to go first?
Yeah, you can give up.
So I'm going to start with Luke 9. You know what? I use Mark 8 instead, actually. I like Mark 8 more. It's the same thing as Luke 9. I'm going to start at verse 34 to chapter 9, verse 1.
Wait, Mark 8 or 9?
Yeah, Mark 8, 34. It goes all the way to chapter 9, verse 1.
Oh, okay, good.
Ah, man. Let me know when you get there.
Okay, I'm looking at it. You can also type in the chat if anybody wants to.
And when he called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? So real quick, I want to make sure we're on the same page, at least on these three verses. What do you think these three verses, saving your life, preserving your life, what do you think they're talking about? Are they talking about like a spiritual, physical life? What are these verses about?
Well, he's factoring. Well, not factoring. Like basically like stating that if you're going to do this, which is following me, you're taking up like a risk. So if you tell this to any type of person, they have to factor in them. Rereading it to now, I just understood that since everybody's appointed once to die, and after that the judgment, if they haven't factored in the cost of like following him and stuff like that, then this announcement comes afterwards. So it's actually talking about both the physical and a spiritual life. I don't see it as a one or the other. If you try to absolutely, in all senses of the word, preserve your life in order to profit the world, and in turn the opposite happens, which is you losing your soul, essentially. Even makes that denotion in the translations where it says it can be taken as life or soul in verses 35 and 36. So I don't really see that as like a huge dichotomy between the earthly life and the spiritual life. I see them that it's tackling both at the same time. So hopefully that help clarifies from here on forward.
Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself. So what I'm seeing is that, hey, if you're going to come after him, you ought to be prepared to die. So yeah, he's telling them the risk of following them. But what I ask you specifically, what do you think about the life part? What do you think it is? Is it like a spiritual life, or is it like a physical life? What is it?
So for the
by enduring?
For the verse 35, right? For whoever wants to save their life, that's what.
Yeah, 35 and 36.
Yeah, so I would say that Jesus is tackling, and like if you seek to preserve your like physical life, you want to keep that, you will lose it. It's like a guarantee.
Gotcha. There we go. We're on the same page. So it's talking about a physical life. And then it's that. I'm going to start 36 again. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Then it says in verse 38, whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So when I look at verse 38, he tells you that that judgment was for this adulterous and sinful generation. So what do you make of this verse?
Okay, so I think there's nothing really too crazy for that. If anyone is ashamed of me, that also pertains to you and I, correct?
I'm talking about verse 38.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. If anyone is ashamed of me, that pertains to you.
No, that's talking about those people in that generation. It literally says it if you continue to read.
Yeah, he's addressing to that generation. I just, you can say yes or no. Pertains to you.
No, I said no.
Why not?
Because that judgment that they were going to partake, the judgment that's being described in verse 38 is for those in that generation. So the shame would also, be for those in that generation.
So in any kind of context, you can't be ashamed of professing Christ.
Yeah, but we're talking about Mark 8, correct? I'm not saying being ashamed of Christ is good, but in verse 38, he's talking about those in that sinful and adulterous generation.
Yeah. So anyone doesn't mean anyone. It just only means it,
Yeah,
right?
He literally limits it to that generation. Yeah.
Okay, so is Mark 9 Mark 8 the only example where anyone, we have to like read that into the rest of the gospels? But like whosoever, anyone.
You would have to give me like an example, but right now I'm in Mark 8.
Okay, John 3. Or whosoever is not anyone, right?
Whosoever, I mean, it's obvious he doesn't even limit it. He actually does the opposite in John 3. He literally opens it up to the world. But in Mark 8, he limits it to those in that generation. I am not in that generation, so therefore that judgment would not include me.
Okay, so this is the case of like you're having your cake and eating. Because like what's the indicator for like John 3 is for everyone? If it's using like a synonymous word with.
I mean, the context, obviously, John 3 is obviously talking about the world, and Mark 8 is talking about the people in that adulterous and sinful generation.
In that generation, John 3. Right?
No, in Mark 8. John 3 makes it very clear that he's talking about the world, and it literally says it, the most popular verse in the Bible, John 3:16. But Mark 8 doesn't say that. Mark 8 simply says, in this sinful and adulterous generation. And then he says, if you continue to read in the next verse, he says, verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here, which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. So I think it reinforces my interpretation of verse 38.
Just to reiterate, so if I start from verse 34, you're the one guide us here. As like here's because I never heard this. So when it says whoever wants to be my disciple, that only pertains to this.
He's talking about those in that generation. They were to literally follow him right there.
Okay, so you and I can never be in any context disciples of Christ then.
I mean, you could be a disciple of Christ in the sense that you're a learner of Christ. I would say myself, I am a disciple of Christ because I read his word and learn of him, but not like this right here, 34 and 38. No.
Or you're talking about hypothetically, but I'm saying like, can you ever, like realistically, ever?
Not in the sense being talked about in Mark 8:34 and to verse 38. Nah.
I mean, I don't understand this reasoning. Like when he's speaking of anyone, and as me as a reader, reading this for the first time, I can understand that not only is Jesus speaking these people at the present moment. By the way, it says some, so it's not like he's applying this to all of them. I can understand from the reader's perspective that is pertaining to me. So, like I said earlier, there are instances where you can use this with other passages that are very complementary with this as to factor in. It takes a whole lot to follow Christ. Like it seems easy to believe into the gospel by nature because it's not really asking too much. It's really asking you to confide with the eternal promise of God. Past that, it's just a whole separate matter entirely. For instance, if you want to follow Christ, you will be divided amongst your own flesh and blood. If you're on the opposite end, right? If they're on the premise that they just believe contrary to God, which is of course Christ. And Christ like emphatically says like, if you love, you should love me more than them. Then it looks like you're hating them. So there's this idea where we prioritize God over everybody else, but really just pleasing him or rather pleasing men. So when it comes into that economy, we shouldn't really compromise. So I think throughout the Gospels, it's very specific between Matthew and Luke, and I guess we can include Mark as well. of this understanding that it actually takes a whole lot of effort and decision into considering discipleship with God, because we understand from early on within the gospel, they started with 70 and then we were reduced to 12, and then they transitioned to becoming apostles, and then we're tasked to make disciples of other nations. So it's a very difficult thing to ask a person, because it requires you to love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. So call back to Exodus 20, right, the very first commandment. I understand this is really like a callback to it. So I don't know why is he only pertaining to these individuals, because I know throughout the whole conversation it seems very repetitive, because at least half of this video is literally talking about this passage. But if we're talking about a particular generation, it includes all people. So the qualifier saying some of them and not all of them really goes to show that it's not supposed to be a blanket statement from a general sense and then reduced down to a very specific sense. Because if I can't actually apply what this text is saying and the rest of this chapter, which is pretty applicable, I can't even integrate into my life. I'm like, okay, this is pertaining to me to some extent. And if you actually pay attention closely, he actually argues for both sides. He says, yes, it is applicable, but it's only for this people. So when I ask him specifically, does Mark 8, when it comes to factoring the discipleship and the cost of thereof, you'll lose your life or you don't, can I apply to me this specifically? And you can see that he tries to avoid the answering directly. You can just say yes and then elaborate afterwards. Don't elaborate and then say yes or no, because sometimes a lot of individuals will do this to filibuster, to just fill the air as if like they're actually addressing it, but they're not. Because if you don't give me like a yes or no black and white answer, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, because you can take it of any number of ways, basically giving yourself an exit point. So that was pretty annoying. So you get to see more of that, so peel an eye for that. Okay, I want to see, where is this transition? So whoever and anyone it's only like particularly talking to the audience, because that's what you're like fixated.
And he literally limits it twice, right? In verse 1 of chapter 9, he says, before some of you taste death, right? And then in 38, he says, this generation. So he literally limits it twice. So I think he really wants them to believe that it was going to happen in their lifetime.
What chapter are you referring to? Because I think I missed it.
Mark 8, verse 38, and Mark 9, verse 1.
For this generation? Because I only see the sinful generation.
And this adulterous, sinful generation. Yeah, I was paraphrasing.
Okay. I thought you were bringing up. No, this is not specific. This is obviously like broad, because if there's no sense to say whoever, anyone, it's not speaking to even like the reader. Like, what's the relevancy to this and to the reader if this pertaining to an event that has no relevancy?
It's a historical narrative. That's what the relevance is, right? Like, let's say something happened, and I said this, whosoever in this generation, like 2,000 years ago, and you're reading it, I wrote it to someone. It doesn't mean that it won't have any effect on them, but it means, hey, it's just a historical narrative. You're supposed to learn history from this book.
So as you can tell, he's going to be doing this a lot, right? So he did it. I think this is the first instance, if I'm not mistaken, because again, I watched this like at least twice already. But he likes to not answer directly and then elaborate. He just elaborates without saying yes or no. So this is why I'm reemphasizing. Notice how it says in any context. That means like, are there possibilities in this or that? He goes, no, not in this one. I'm like, okay, but I'm not asking that. And if I want to claim like he is doing right now, can I be in any context a disciple of Christ? And he just gave one, and I'm asking that. He's basically saying yes, but with just going not Mark 8, because as soon as he grants that, because literally it's given in this context, it's only pertaining to these individuals. He's just doing a roundabout answering to what I'm actually trying to address here. Because if I don't ask this clarifying question, then I don't know where your headspace is and how do you see it. Let me allow to see your perspective and vice versa, to see if we can come to a similar conclusion. He refuses to do so by doing this, like, I don't know, this theatrics of avoiding to answer what I'm actually asking you. Then you're doing that intentionally and you're not actually contributing to the conversation. It's just that is. Yeah, so if I'm reading this, I'm not supposed to apply this in any sense to me personally.
I mean, it's not written for that. It's just a historical narrative of the life of Christ. Yeah.
I disagree. There's so many sermons and passages using this as like a way to like Christ factoring the severity if you are a disciple or you're not. So to basically like assert your view, you have to just basically like abandon all.
Really, I think you could take principles from it, but just because you could take principles from it, like the same way these guys, if you read The New Testament, like Paul, for example, he took a lot of principles from the stories in the Old Testament, even though those stories had nothing to do with him. I would do the same thing with the New Testament.
Yeah, I'm not saying like what Jesus has done. I'm just saying there's no actual application to the read. Like if I'm reading this and I can disregard some of the text, including this one, as it has no relevancy, like I can't actually apply it in any regard. All the things to associate with this, you have to like throw it out the window. So this is where we're gonna go around in circles for like the rest of the like 10 minutes or 15 minutes from here on out. He basically said yes, but he just reworded in a sense to avoid actually saying it. So again, I have to reiterate this every single time. He's going to continue doing this. I don't know what's so difficult of saying basically yes, because the question is, right? Can I apply this to my life when it's talking about whosoever wants to be the disciple? I want to be a disciple of Christ. Okay, so he's about to convey this exact same thing. So if this doesn't apply to me, or somebody that wasn't there at that time being presently spoken of, somebody that's coming out 2,000 years later, I'm supposed to disregard this applicable to me and what comes afterwards as like an absolute conclusion, right? Like what can stem from it. And he's saying no, but then at the same time saying yes. So it's either like you take a stance or you're just refusing to be indecisive in this case. And I'm gonna continue pressing him on this because like I think he understands the line of reasoning what I'm trying to do here, because obviously like the context prior to this leads up to this point. The chapter doesn't start in verse what is it 34, surprisingly. And yeah, it's just so random, because if anybody were to ask this question to themselves, including you and I, right, and he's telling us no, then we can do the same for the rest of the Bible. Like there's some things that's only pertaining to some people, and we can let me present a rhetorical, right? There's let's talk about like First Timothy, right, where Paul is iterating, really just stating that in any circumstance, women should not exercise authority over a man. And then some bad, really apologetics will exegete this and then just imply that because of the context of that surrounding time, historically speaking, women were not educated, and so when they started usurping the authority. It was that particular church in Ephesus where they were causing a disturbance, and that's fine and dandy, but the thing that gets in the way of that is Paul is literally clarifying, just like God made Adam to lead Eve, it was not the other way around, because we saw that the error of Adam is, wait, I'm supposed to be taking care of you, not the other way around, and much less exercising authority, because it was through Eve's influence to sin in her own manner, and then cause her husband to stumble, basically, and he had error, not understanding that he was supposed to take care of her. If he actually did his job, then she would not eat the fruit and they wouldn't have fell, and then the rest of humanity is doomed by extension. So that's the actual thing, because neither of them were doing what they're supposed to do. Eve wandered off and were tempted with somebody who she had a conversation who she didn't. Adam didn't actually do his job, and we understand that Adam could have done his job because, you know, he was naming the animal, so he was capable of doing so. I just find this very weird to just like historically, like, sure, I'm not there, but just because this conversation was done, that basically relinquished any relevancy through this particular chapter or any chapter in the Bible. That's what we're really tackling on. And so when he refuses to acknowledge that, then that's how I know he's being very disingenuous. By keep dancing around like, oh no, not in this particular manner because it's a sinful generation. I'm like, I understand. You don't have to repeat that over and over. I get it. You're not considering yourself sinful generation, even though that could be applied to literally any generation. Think about this, right? Since the last 2,000 years, we weren't exercising sexual morality in such a high degree. Up until now, we have like OnlyFans, so many social apps, and even the stuff we watch. Like if my 3-year-old or any like young kid will go online and see stuff, they're not going to say like naked booty cheeks and just these over sensualized content in front of their faces with like little to no regard. I just find that highly absurd. So I think he's referring to a specific generation once everybody is like going to be in that event simultaneously, whoever has and will existed. And so they're going to be evaluated. Okay, these are the ones that basically that I'm denouncing, and these are the ones who willing to die for me in the sense of not forsaking me. And so they died with their faith. They lived for it, and at the same time they died for it. That's what I understand from the whole narrative, not just exclusively just isolating Mark 8. This goes complementary to everything that has been talking before and afterwards. I think it becomes like a weird, like, kind of bubble or echo chamber, so to speak, of just isolating yourself from this generation. Because if you're gonna keep on doing this, then we can do that for the rest of the chapter, and then the Bible doesn't make sense. I think it's really absurd, to be honest.
How would you explain that? There are some principles that you could apply in the whole gospel, like loving your neighbor as yourself, loving God as with all your heart, etc., etc. The same way Paul applied Old Testament stories that had nothing to do with him. The same thing Peter did when talking about Balaam. That story had nothing to do with Peter. It just had to do with Balaam and the donkey and the children of Israel. He would apply that story, not because he's trying to insert himself into that story, but there's principles, universal principles that you could take from these stories. So, yeah, you could take principles from all the gospels, like being saved. It's a principle. If you believe in Christ, you will have everlasting life. But you can't, make the story of non-effect. Like these stories had to do with the first century believers.
But it's not all. It's not only written for them, right?
It was written to them.
But okay, 2 and 4 are different. Is it written for us or not?
Is it written for us? I wouldn't. I mean, yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like you're both sides of the fence on straight. But we can go to Matthew 20. Of everything that leads up to this, right, is specifically pertaining around this context, then I can't actually apply it. So you can't say yes or no at the same time. He thinks he is agreeing with me, but he's actually arguing against. So it's like almost like 3 people in this conversation: me, him, and then him arguing with another version of himself. So it's really ridiculous, but it's like almost like he doesn't actually want to compromise in his faulty reasoning, where he can't be both sides of the aisle. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's either it is applicable or don't. Just besides the point of being this generation, like if you actually pay attention, he is so on that it basically becomes his personality. The fact that he didn't see it, and then he's like a byproduct of Jesus coming back, right? And everything's been fulfilled. And so everything that pertains to the Bible is just like it's already been done for, even though there's so many errors. And I don't understand how you can get this in the first place. So I don't want to really detract from that conversation, but it's like there's really 2 types of disassociation, right? One is of cognitive, right? That's pretty clear. And the second part is because you're not referring to yourself as this particular generation when he's referring to something of a future event. He is basically separating stuff like, I can never be these individuals. These individuals are wicked by Jesus' definition. So it kind of, well, not kind of, it does implement a superiority complex. That's what I'm getting from this. And I think this is very detrimental because it leads to a lot of error.
You're going to take me to Matthew 24 now. Let me address that final point that you just made right there. I would say it's the word of God. Therefore, it's for us. It's good for us. Like, the scriptures are for the man of God. The same way, when Paul was writing that, he was talking about the Old Testament scriptures, and those Old Testament scriptures, well, a lot of them, like, Chronicles, Genesis, and Exodus, they weren't predicting anything or anything like that, right? But Paul could use those scriptures either way to be perfect, to be a man of God. Same thing I would do with the New Testament scriptures. But go ahead, take me to Matthew 24 and prove your. We can get into double fulfillment later, but what is your answer for? Because you never gave me an actual answer for Mark 8 or Mark 9 verse 1.
Well, you already know my answer. Like this is like applicable. Like I understand this, and you asked me like, what does this mean to you? And I literally said it off the rip. You're taking it as like it's written to these individuals, and like when I pressed you on it, you're saying for. So like you're like changing what I asked you, saying like, is it written for us? And you said like, no, it's first century Christians. And I already told you this is Christ weighing in the factors of what happens if you follow him or you do not.
No. Hold on. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you about, and I think I gave you a great answer. It's about principles. If you theoretically, hypothetically want to apply to yourself, whatever, I would say, hey, take the principle. But in verse 38 and in chapter 9, verse 1, it says that these events were going to happen before some of them tasted of death. Are these people still alive today? He makes it very clear. Some of them standing right there. by the way, too.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that again. What was your point for them being alive or not? So at this point, I should have really just moved to Matthew 24 because again, I sense like early on that we're just going in circles. But yeah, the fact that he brought up like Balaam, like yes, you weren't there physically. Nobody's making that claim, so I don't know why you have to even clarify that. But it's like the reasoning behind there when it comes in the context of that, it just goes to show like if we're going to speak for God, making sure that we do it correctly, and when He asks us, we you know we're hasty to do so, not really like hesitating. So we see that Balaam is kind of split, right? He would rather speak for Balak, if I'm not mistaken, and then but he has this priority to speak over God, and he was actually judge when he didn't do everything what God asked him to. So the fact that Peter is telling this to the audience and is being written and is being explained, the point is that we should really do what God asks us of. This tackling on the in the sense of obedience. So the fact that if they're telling to them, right, and this is like something so we can have like a reference point, so we can ground ourselves, like where is Peter driving this narrative? If I'm reading this, I can understand what the purpose of him bringing in the first place and what kind of message it's conveying, so I can put them myself in the mind. Because if they forget and don't actually have a good example, then I can't have anything as well as those people that were spoken and being addressed at that time. This message. So I know it was to them, but is it for us as well by extension? And so notice how he just likes to avoid in this whole like theatric of like because it didn't seem like he had this thought process all the way through. It seems like he just saw the surface level kind of it and it was just good enough for him. Therefore I'm a preterist. Like I'm not trying to straw man, but this is pretty much what I'm getting the impression from this particular individual.
Yeah, so the argument that I'm making is that Christ is saying that these events in 38 and chapter 9, verse 1, were going to happen in that generation and before some of them tasted death. And also says the one standing here, right? He says in verse 9, verily I say unto you that there be some of them that stand here. So that's definitely not talking about you and me. Like, I don't see how you would stretch that out like that. I think that would be, eisegesis.
My words again, this is like being applicable to anyone who I don't know why. It's like you're taking this event and it can only pertain to the people this, and then like the audience, prospective readers or like scholars, like after this time point, they can't actually like factor this. It's just all they can get is that this generation we're gonna see these things. You're like hyper fixated on that.
No, because it says it like multiple times, right? If you read carefully, but that's not what I asked you. I'm asking you about verse 9. He makes it very clear that one, it was going to happen in that generation, and two,
yeah, if people choose to have the disciples or not.
Let me finish my point. So he says there's some standing here, right? What does he mean by that? There's some standing here.
That there were an undefined amount of people there that he's referring to.
There was people standing. There was the people that were standing in front of him that he was talking to were not going to taste of death till these things happened, right? So if therefore that was supposed to happen before some of them standing here didn't die, then those things must have happened in the first century, or you could just say these people are 2,000 years old or something like that.
You can't even like grasp the idea that it's like it's so relevant that it's actually happening to the people speaking to right now.
I don't think that's what it's saying. You would have to prove.
But you never had that thought.
I mean, most people don't have that thought, by the way, when you read these passages. But I mean, if you could prove it, go ahead, persuade me.
No, it's not about proving that thought that you never had. It's just the fact that like some of you even standing today, like he's making a clarifying point. Like so let's say I say something that's kind of convoluted and you want me to like make it easier to understand. Like, can you understand that Christ is doing that right here? This is the first time where he said something because he kind of speaks a little bit too fast. But I understand that if we were talking about physical death, because he's only taking that, I take it as a both and rather than either or just on one perspective. This makes sense why we're talking about preservation of your soul, because it says, what does it profit? It's asking a rhetorical. A man to gain the whole world but lose his soul, that's the equivalent exchange. You can't have both things. You can't go for the world and for God. You have to compromise one for the other, right? We have a lot of passages of that, and I think it's very frustrating to make him basically like he's asserting that if it's not talking about like physical death, then they have to be like 2,000 years alive. So obviously, if we're gonna go down that route, that actually can't match up, because of course after what Genesis 6, everybody can live up to 120, but it's not minimum. And of course, that's not the claim we're making, because you interpreting in this way, that's the only way that you can understand. So rather than understanding, wait, maybe I'm actually understanding this incorrectly. So self-reflection, obviously not being present here. He's taken this. This can only mean this generation. So it's like the tunnel vision and the hyperfixation is really surreal. It's not that really adamant. But what's really annoying is that I keep telling him like yes and no, like wait, Gerard, like you're going to see right now. But it seems like he likes to actually fill in to seem like if I just repeat this a number of times, then he will accept it. And it's just like not really catching up when it comes to yes or no questions. Like for instance, the Bible says if you say yes, yes, and no, no, this is sufficient. Anything more than that is actually, one of a wicked one. I'm roughly paraphrasing. So ask yourself in this question, like who does that pertain to in this passage? Obviously, it's not pertaining to the people that you're speaking to there. That's something that we can apply to every now. Because if you ask me a very easy, simple question, right? I'm not asking like your opinion on anything. I'm asking, is this the way it is? Or if it's not, like you have to tell me just plain and simple. If you have to do all this like marathon and like the Predator shuffle, right? Where it's like you can't actually answer the question like you're being asked to, you don't even have to say yes or no. I'm like, well, yeah, for the most part, like you can actually like synonymously use words to just get your point across. But if you're refusing to do so, you're obviously obfuscating, right? Like you're not actually answering directly. It's like I'm speaking to you, but you're like, I don't know who you're talking to, but apparently you're not really talking to me, because like you refuse to actually cooperate consistently. That's when you see in like any type of question, like if we're even going to the court of law, and then you have to do this whole thing, the judge will be like, you can just stop that. If you refuse to answer questions, then we're gonna hold you in contempt, because you're obviously like wasting people's time, and there's like a serious matter that we're talking about. And of course we're not in a court setting, but if we're talking about like did Jesus come back or not, this is not something that's like opinionated. It's either a fact or not. So yeah, just to see the authenticity is really lacking, the lack thereof. But it just seems to show like if you can't give me a cut and dry answer, why should you believe anything that I'm saying? Like if I'm preaching the gospel and I can't guarantee you salvation because Christ obviously did, what's even the point of continue listening to me? And if you ask me like very simple questions, forget about very complicated, convoluted one. We can't even get to that point if we're just dancing around over the topic and actually giving a non-answer. So I just don't find it very fruitful whatsoever.
I don't think that's what Christ is doing. I think
I don't think. Okay, that's fine. You can just say I don't think. That's fine. It's like okay, I want it to be like this, right? Versus the like, oh yeah, that's most likely the case, because he's not exclusively just talking to generation. He's making a clarifying point. Like I don't see this as a actual like what's that figure of speech? Like digging for scraps. I think that's like the figure away. I don't know. I'd rather just move to Matthew 24, because the last time I spoke to Joshua and Moses, and I don't know when they're gonna have this conversation, but this is basically the crux of everything. I don't really see Mark.
I think it's a huge problem, because Mark 8 and Luke 9, they're all linked to Matthew 24 and Matthew 25. So if you say Mark 8 was fulfilled in that generation, which Mark 8 clearly says it was going to happen in that generation, then you also have to grant me Matthew 25. And if you grant me Matthew 25, then you grant me the whole resurrection. So that's why I want to answer on Mark 8.
I already told you. You want my answer to fit yours, and it's not gonna happen.
No, you just gave me a possibility. So
No. I asked you. I didn't ask you. I didn't give you a possibility.
literally, you asked me a question, and then you gave me what you said. What if this is a clarifying point or something? You literally said what if, so that's a possibility.
Yeah, I asked you, and then I said he's making a clarifying point. So there's a difference between
Perfect. So
there's a difference between asking you, right, to see like if you have that thought, and then there's a difference between me asserting that he is making a clarifying point.
I perfect. So clarify. Say it one more time. What is Christ doing in Mark 8 and in Mark?
He's clarifying that some of these individuals that don't give a specified number, that this could be happening when it comes to in terms of discipleship. if they denounce him or not or whatever.
Can you please prove that now?
That's what the text is saying. What do you mean prove it? Like I'm not saying that it's not gonna happen when it turns into this generation. So I don't know what you're talking about. Like prove it.
Also,
Literally, the text is saying like this is happening. Even some view right now. Like, what are you on about?
all right, perfect. So he said, you literally just said right now that, hey, I'm not denying that it was not going to happen in that generation. So it is going to happen in that generation then, right?
You're really just circumventing. It could happen to anyone. It doesn't pertain to a specific generation. It could happen. Listen. Right? Like you're saying, just wait for me to finish. Right? Here's the point. It could happen in that generation, and it could happen even today. That's the key word of whosoever and anyone. I think out of all the questions that we ask each other, this is probably like the most. I'm trying to avoid saying the S word. It's the most double-digit IQ question you can actually ask, or even single-digit. Like I've been restating because that's what he wants to do. He wants me to change the answer, which obviously I'm not gonna cater to his view because it just doesn't make sense at all. But the fact that I've been literally understanding the leading context up until what he's adamantly about, which is speaking about this particular event. And so the fact that he says like convince me, like, or prove it, actually he's like prove to me that this is the case. I'm asking you if you ever have this thought, like what do you mean proving if you did have the thought or not? So I don't think he's actually like coming to terms of what I'm actually asking him. It seems like he's pretending to do so.
And no, but whosoever and anyone is limited to the people being ashamed of him in this generation.
Okay, so just throw that text out the window. Let's go to Matthew 20.
You're not really addressing you're not okay.
No, you're grabbing these words and you're fitting them to something that doesn't actually say that. Like anyone doesn't mean anyone in Mark 8 in your view. Just say that.
And I gave you a
No, that's not shocking. That's what you're literally doing. You're not actually using the word anyone that means anyone.
So I haven't addressed that.
It's called audience relevancy, and it's even relevant to the reader that they can apply it to themselves even in this generation.
Interesting audience relevancy. So if Christ, all right, so Omni, stop thinking like you're in a 21st century believer. Think about like this. Imagine, hey, you're in the story right now, right? And if Christ said unto you, hey, Omni, and let's say Goku is there, Wu's there, Smokey's there, Noah's there, Moses is there, and I say, hey, guys, there's some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see this happen, what would you think?
But he was mentioning up to that point, yeah?
No, I'm asking you, like, what would you think if I was Christ, right? In this hypothetical, I'm Christ, and I say, hey, guys, there's some standing here which shall not taste of death until these things happen. What would you think he's talking about? Hey, this could happen at any time, or is he saying, hey, this is going to happen in our life?
Oh, he's clarifying this is like the fifth time I'm saying this. He's literally clarifying that this is going to happen to you, some of you, like even standing right now, and it wouldn't be surprised that it still is. Keyword still. It seems like he doesn't understand that Jesus is actually making a clarifying point here. Like if he's going to say something of a future expectation, and some of them are on that account. And of course, it'll pertain to either or side of it, like either you're on the good side or the bad side. It'll make sense that, by the way, since you will be death, and obviously that verse where a man is appointed once to die and then the judgment, they're actually going to taste death, physical, and then to see if they're going to experience the second death or not, right? And just because Jesus is making a clarifying point, he's actually like making it present that some of them are present right now. It is the case for you, or soon to be, which makes sense. And it's not the only time like Jesus makes this. If I actually pull up 1 Corinthians 6, there's actually a good example of this, right? Speaking about the ones that inherit the eternal kingdom. So it's pretty relevant. Starting at verse 9. Or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? So pay attention here. He's making like a general statement, right? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexual immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. So he's just naming a couple things, right? So listen to who he's addressing, and by extension, the reader. How is this going to be evaluated from that perspective? And such were some of you. So notice how it's being talking about in Mark. I can get in between what I think somewhere around like 30 to like 70 AD. So there's like a rough
estimation of 40 years period. Some of them have died since then. Like to say nobody has died in between before seeing that, that's not what he's saying. That's why he purposely picked, well, not purposely, deliberately used the word some, because it could pertain by case people, not all of them. So if he's speaking to a generation, they wouldn't be making sense of him saying some. But some of these individuals who he's speaking to were thieves and greedy and drunkards and revilers. That's why he's clarifying, and such were some of you. Okay, so if we actually apply the same line of reasoning back into Mark 8, when he's talking about this, like, you will not taste death, as in terms of both physical and then spiritual, as like a case. That's why he said for some of you, because it's apparent that they will experience this one or they experience the other one, right? And we have to see by case. Are we willing to go down 2,000 years down the road to see who it is? I think that's a waste of time. But you can apply this to some of you. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have to basically avoid these consequences if I decide to become a disciple, because the actual detriment of me not doing so is that I will be basically judged and be denounced, right? I will expect that fearful judgment. So I don't know why it's not getting through his head. I think this is the effect of like what happens to your brain if you like are so immersed with so much error that this happens to your brain. This is definitely not healthy whatsoever. Like, this is your brain on preterism. Like, I do listen to people who actually convey themselves very cordially and meticulously and thoughtful, like Gavin Orslin. I watched his whole entire video, and he gives like he really gives like both perspectives. He leans to one way, but he doesn't adamantly believe it out. So I really don't fault him for that. But this is a person that's so dedicated, and something that even by his arguments, because again, we're like what 20 minutes in, and he's basically like he cannot get past this point because it's very hard to prove from his perspective. But you can see how detrimental it is for him, because he cannot stop obsessing over this particular matter, which doesn't stand to hold its weight. It's actually pretty sad.
So can you? All right. So this in Mark 8 is going to happen to some of you standing right here, right?
We're talking about the denouncing, right?
We're talking about the Son of Man coming in the clouds, the kingdom of God, etc., etc. I mean, that's what Mark 8 is about, and Mark 9.
It's part of it, but it's not entirely about it.
The part where it talks about the kingdom and the Son of Man coming in the clouds, that's the part we're talking about specifically.
Yeah, so this is a clear class example that you're isolating one part of the whole chapter, which had like spiritual nuggets, and you're just disregarding the rest of this by just only hyperfixating on this, and it's just this generation. Like, it's actually absurd. Like, it's actually not really that hard to understand like where your line of reasoning.
I mean, you keep asserting it. I keep asking you for evidence. You haven't provided none. So you said
what's evident? I'm literally just rephrasing what the text is actually saying, right? And then you keep applying that this generation is only exclusive to it. Like the fact that I asked you, right, and you reworded my question and try to avoid a yes or no question like at least 4 times, and my answer never even changed from the initial when you asked me.
I mean, you keep this conversation is recorded, so I'm pretty sure you can watch it later. And
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I already told you about that. I'm recording it.
Real quick,
No issue.
real quick, let me finish my sentence, please. Thank you. So you said that these things in Mark 8 were going to affect that generation. You literally just said that. So I'm asking you now, which of these things?
I already told you prior to it. If you can't listen, then that's on you. And we should move to Matthew 24, because we've been like, what, 24 minutes on this?
I mean, because you...
No, I already told you, and everybody has listened up until this point. So if you want me to repeat it a 6th time, that's you can just watch the video. I'll send you the link.
I mean, okay, you can watch the videos yourself, but please send me the video too, so we could,
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll send it to you. All right.
So let's go to Matthew 24. Yep, I'm in Matthew 24. Go ahead, go crazy.
Yeah, I also noticed very like midway through, actually pretty early. It's just you can tell that I'm progressively getting annoyed, because it's like trying to fit a square through a circle hole, and it just can't. Dude, it's like if it failed the first 100 times, let me just actually keep on doing it. Just so like, oh, you know what? I'm now convinced. It just took the 101 time, right? But you could tell this is a very selective hearing. Like, I already said it. Like, you can rewatch the video. I'm probably gonna put like timestamps or whatever, but you can see that I'm literally not straying away from what was my initial thing from the jump. Okay, So I'm not even asserting like a new view, this and all that. I understand what Jesus is implying, what he's trying to say, but unfortunately, like he can't see this, and you can see like he's not used to having somebody to like not be pushed around a lot. I don't know who he speaks basically, but there's a couple of times where he just laughs very nervously, because like obviously like I understand what the late portion of Mark 8, and forget about the rest of it, because don't ask a preterist what's the surrounding context and why he's finishing off this important thing towards the late of this chapter, and then progressively going to the next chapter. They can't actually give you answers because they're too focused. I'm like, I'm not this generation. Oh, dude, it's so bad. Oh, man. Okay, so same thing I told to Joshua. Why does everything contingent on the destruction of the temple? Explain the thought process.
Because that's the only thing talked about in Matthew 24. That's literally the whole. Notice how they associate the destruction of the temple with destruction of the world. Like, that's like the main. That's literally the whole. All of the discourse springs out from that question: when these things shall be, and the temple being destroyed, etc., etc. So that's why it's talking about the destruction of the temple, because it literally says it. Yeah.
So clarifying question: is the entire temple only about the destruction of the temple?
Is the destruction is holy like is the what did you
Dude, okay, if you're gonna keep dancing around questions, then this conversation is gonna end. I asking you a very simple yes or no question, and you're literally flip-flopping around, dude. Listen.
You're just blabbering right now.
Listen. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I ask you if you're gonna argue in good faith, and you're obviously not doing that from the get-go. I ask you a plain yes or no question. Is this chapter only about the temple? And you're going, stop with the theatrics. Like it's pretty pathetic, dude. I don't know how old you are, but if you actually want to have a discussion about contrasting views in good faith, it's not that difficult. I'm gonna unmute you, right? And if you keep doing that, it literally just ends there. Like I don't care if you're right, I'm wrong, but this is nonsense. Like this is not how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, much less like spread the gospel. I'm gonna give you another shot, but please stop with this, because your method, like the last time we spoke about this, when it was just you and me and Philip, you just kept doing this and you just kept going on without actually answering a yes or no question. All right, go ahead.
I was, you said some. I don't think you asked the question properly, so I was asking you to repeat yourself. So go ahead.
So the question was: is Matthew 24 only talking about the destruction of the temple?
Is Matthew 24 only talking about the destruction of the temple? Yeah, that's the main focus. Not only it talks about multiple things like the gospel being preached to all nations, etc., but the main focus is the destruction of the temple. These are all signs that are given before the destruction of the temple happens.
So that's two things. That's it, because I want to make sure before we get into it, I don't want you to go, oh yeah, but this as well.
So what?
Okay, so those two things. Okay, so can you read the first 3 verses for me, please?
And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily unto you there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. But here's verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?
Okay, so can you say yes or no that they had a prior conversation before Jesus was asked this specific question?
Do I have to answer yes or no?
There's a question, and I just only ask you like the first 3 verses. And then the contingent point here is that they were asked a question, but Jesus was already talking about something before this question. I just want to know if you recognize that as well. That's pretty simple.
First of all, I don't like being asked yes or no questions. I find that highly, it's not
what?
It's it's not.
Why? Oh, okay. Hold on. Oh, wait, pause. I'm sorry. You asked me if I was pre-trib, right? That's a yes or no question. If I don't ask that because whatever reason you're asking, like what are we gonna get with these questions? They're not gonna be answered.
Answer it yes or no. You could have answered however you want to. So I would say, let me answer your question. I'm not gonna answer yes or no. In Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew is not written in chronological order. So of course things were happening before Matthew 24. Obviously, nobody's gonna deny that. But if you're gonna point me back to Matthew 23 and Matthew 24, they're not, the story is not happening like that. It's not written in chronological order. It's written thematically. So that's my answer for that question. Only Luke, the only gospel in the New Testament that claims to be written chronologically, like A, B, C, D, is Luke. So Matthew, if you look at Matthew 23, that happened in Luke 14, and Matthew 24 happened in Luke 21. So it's like a couple of chapters in between.
So your answer, if like to this question, when it comes to Jesus talking about before he asks about the three things: the end of the age, the sign, and the when portion. He's saying this out of sequence. That's
I really wanted to make this point, but again, like I was just trying to disarm this like constant hammering down point. But there's like an actual really good rebuttal towards this, because if he's really just contingent on audio relevancy only on the people picking up time, forget about the readers, like the ones like you and I are picking up the Bible to see if like, okay, is this can be pertaining to a lot of people outside of the median audience. And one of the points, like, of course, he's talking to some of the disciples, but Jesus actually explicitly say this, and if we're gonna hold it to a literal interpretation, then he has an issue with Mark 14, actually. Yeah, let me just go scroll down to verse 60, and this is the point where he's being judged by them. And so obviously everybody's giving their false testimony to see what they can pin him with. And Caiaphas at this time, which is like the high priest here, is going to ask him, are you claiming to be God? You know, just speak to us clearly. And Jesus actually referenced back to Daniel, to something that, if we're going to take this literally, he has an issue because actually Caiaphas died around like 40 to 42 AD. So this is way before the temple. So if we actually apply this same line of reasoning into what he's saying with Mark 8, then at a really detrimental capacity, Jesus was actually misleading these people, or worse, lying. Okay, so let's read this, right? Yet even their testimony did not agree, and the high priest Caiaphas stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, have you no answer to make? What is that these men testify against you? But he remained silent and made no answer, right? All these false accusations. Again, the high priest asked him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? So he's asking a question pertaining to divinity. Let's see if Jesus danced around this question like this preterist loves to do. And Jesus said, I am, and you will see. Okay, you, Caiaphas, will see with your own eyes the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. So remember how in the earlier portion of this video, he just said like everything was fulfilled by 70 AD. Caiaphas died around 40 to 42 AD, roughly speaking. So if he died 30 years prior to this, and Jesus said that you, Caiaphas, will see it, because he's re-emphasizing and he's doubling down that he's claiming divinity, and he's linking to the same event we've been talking about this whole entire time, and it doesn't actually represent, historically speaking, right? We're using the primary source of the Bible to see if it actually played in practicality and the reality we're living in, and it didn't. Then this whole thing is done. It's over with. Okay, so understanding, if we keep continuing with this line of reasoning, you're going to be wrong and you're going to fall flat to your face, dude. Like, if you're a preterist, your next stage after this is that if your worldview gets shattered, you become an atheist. Like, let's be 100% honest, because if you actually are gonna throw around the text because you're not actually taking it sincerely, you're already fitting in the conclusion before we even get to that point, right off the rip, then don't even bother appealing to the Bible. Okay, just appeal to anything else besides that, because you're not actually addressing the content that's being taken. Let's see how he responds. And the high priest tore his garments and said, what further witnesses do we need? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision? And they will all condemn him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him, to cover his face, and strike him, saying to him, prophesy, and the guards received him with blows. So obviously he's just like, just insulted, because actually the high priest, right, and there's like a little small Bible study, they're tasked to go in there, risk their lives, present their own offering, and then once they're done that, they can present the other offerings. If they miss any step on this particular process, they will drop dead. So Christ, in the perspective of Caiaphas, is just taken aback, because not only is he claiming to be God, he's linking himself with the prophecy, and also he's thinking of himself. I'm like, how dare this bottom feeder, from his perspective, claim to be the same God when I'm the high priest giving out my life on a basically a day-to-day basis, just so I wouldn't see death, taste death, like how this guy's like insinuating. But the guy died of late age, so it really doesn't suit your narrative. And then there's multiple people as well. There's at least like 3 or 4 other apostles that died beforehand. So if he was talking and he was referring to some of them, and if we're gonna go to Matthew 24, that's what I was actually gonna lead into that late portion end of the video, but we didn't because the predator shuffle and whatnot. But if he was speaking to the disciples and he was addressing them as like a collective group, how come some of them then and some of them didn't? Why didn't Jesus clarify to that degree? And even past that, Caiaphas, he definitely died before 70 AD, so that's very difficult to get around to. So there's only 2 conclusions. Either Jesus misled, if you're still on this view, or he lied. The correct view is like, oh, okay, it's not a literal thing like Caiaphas wouldn't see, but up until the point where everybody gets judged, like you're going to be standing along people that existed 6,000 years ago. We're going to see who stands with God and without. That just makes sense. We're going to see all these individuals. So look forward to that.
Yeah, Matthew is not written in chronological order. Yeah.
And what this is the new for me. Where's this coming from?
Yeah, from the Gospel of Luke. If you read Luke chapter 1 to 3, he tells you, hey, the reason I'm writing these things to you is so that you can have an orderly account, so an account in order. So when you look at the story of Luke, the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew, you're going to see that Luke places the events in different places. Like, for example, Matthew 23 is not placed in Luke 21 or in Luke 20. It's placed in the beginning of Luke, like in Luke 14. You shall see me before the, like, for example, you're going to see me come in the name of the Lord, something like that. That's that happens in Luke 14, and you also see that being fulfilled in Luke 19.
Real quick, can you put that in the chat so I can be with you?
O Jerusalem, O Jerusalem. That's literally Matthew 23, right? Which kills the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings? And ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, and verily unto you, ye shall not see me until the time come when you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And then when you read Luke 19, verse 36, that's when they see him again in the story. So if you read Matthew 23 and Matthew 24, you would think, oh, it happens right after each other. But in Luke, it doesn't. Neither in John, by the way. So I think those are, clear examples which prove that Matthew was not written in chronological order.
Okay, and give me a moment because I never heard this. Let's see. Okay, let me pull up Matthew 20.
Yeah. Then don't forget that the Olivet Discourse happens in Luke 21. That's like what? 19, 20, 21. That's 8 chapters after Luke 13.
So from Matthew 23, where is it exactly? Is it after? It's talking about the what?
23. That's in Matthew 23. I think it's 39. 38 and 39.
Oh, okay. I'll just read this.
Yeah.
I see quotations in this one. Is this not? Why is this in quotations? In Matthew, let me see the KJV. I use different translation. If the KJV has a quotation, that's parentheses, not parentheses. So KJV doesn't have that. No, not the question mark. It has the, when somebody's quoting and it has like these like
that's like quotation marks.
Quotation. Thank you. Yeah. So I have to look. Why is that? I honestly never heard this argument, so I really can't say anything towards that. I'm gonna have to look into it.
I can show you more passages, by the way. I can even ask ChatGPT to give me more examples.
Yeah. How about this? Since you weren't prepared, you can send to me, and I'll look into them, and I'll let you know when I'm done reading through it.
You can even ask ChatGPT that it'll tell you that Matthew was written thematically, so it's into themes, right? At first, it's like life lessons, and then later, turns to eschatology. Then later again, it turns to the life of Christ. I'm pretty sure this is well recognized among scholars.
Let's see, why is this quotes? Actually, is it in this translation? Does not. Oh, it's Psalm. Okay, Psalm 118.
That this is like well known in the scholarship world that Matthew's not written in
this quote
sequential order.
So right before I asked this question, because the rest of the video really just speak about self, because we can't move past Matthew 24, unfortunately, because of this whole drawing circles and circles and circles of of this exact same point. But I want you to notice how he keeps changing his stance, because he starts off with only, and then later on only doesn't mean only, and it's very quickly, so it won't drag on. And then later towards the end of the video, he tries to assert that I'm saying that I'm making 3 questions, and I think he might have confused Matthew 24 with Luke 21, because when I look at it, it looks like 3 different questions are being asked. But in Matthew's account, since we're literally on there, I see it as like a 3-part question. And for some reason, like he's understanding as 2 and 3 separate individual questions rather than 1. But just really pay attention that who is actually actively listening and somebody who's pretending to be.
But yeah, what did you bring me to Matthew 24? Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Back on that, Matthew 20. Just on this chapter, because I think you're trying to make a point where the book itself is not like in sequential order, sure. But in this instance, like let's say you and I have a 2-hour conversation from beginning to end. You're saying that he's having this conversation out of order still?
I'm sorry. Clarify. Go ahead.
Okay, so like let's say you and I start talking about like football, like American football, and then we talked about stocks in the stock market exchange. You're saying that this chapter, it doesn't say anything from beginning to end in order as well?
Verse 1, I'm pretty sure. That's when it talks about the destruction of the temple. I mean, if you want to, press me on the sequential part, you could just go take me to Luke, right? Because Luke is in order, right? So you could use Luke 20 and, match it up with Luke 21 perfectly. That wouldn't cause a problem. But you can't use Matthew 23, especially when he showed you Luke 13 and Luke 21. There's like 8 chapters apart, right? So many things happen. I'm pretty sure so many years happened in those stories right there between those 2 chapters. I mean, yeah. So if you want to use that argument that you're trying to, it will only work if you use Luke 20 and Luke 21, but you can't use Matthew 23 and Matthew 24. I wouldn't be able to tell you from Matthew what was happening before Matthew 24. Now, if you use Luke, yeah, absolutely. I can tell you. It tells you right there in Luke 20.
Hold on. I think you're like half and half. Are you like yes or no?
I'm saying no for Matthew. If I use Luke 20, then I will be able to tell you what happened before Luke 21.
You mean Luke 21 or like
Luke 20 and Luke 21? Because Luke 21 is simply Matthew 24, just in Luke's account.
Yeah. No for this, but yes for Luke. Is it because you're factoring in because he's a different person and he's telling his testimony different?
Exactly. He's telling his testimony historically. Matthew is not.
That's a very hard thing to like actually assert, because then this would be like a clarifying thing on, especially on modern translations, because to read a chapter, hold on, I'll let you speak. To have this, like if we read a chapter and it's all out of like order, then that has to be account to like so big that has to be integrated with like discussions of like, okay, when you read this chapter, keep this in mind. And you telling me this is like the first I heard it, because then I will have to account for the rest of the Bible if it does the same thing, like in your case when you're saying with Luke 14 and 19. You don't see that as problematic?
Absolutely not, because first of all, Matthew doesn't claim to be written in in sequential order, but Luke does. It's simply like the first 3 verses. That's what the Gospels are written for. It's a sequential order of the story of Christ. So what I would do if I were you, I would read the Gospel of Luke and then read the Gospel of Matthew. And with the Gospel of Luke, you can organize everything historically. But I think this is well known amongst Christian scholarship. Like, this is well known. It's not a fringe view. Like, the majority of people that study Matthew, all the scholars that study Matthew know this. Like, this is well known.
Oh, this is first for me. Okay, so then if that's the case, how come when he's clarifying about the day and hour, he's saying but concerning? So he's making like a distinction with this time frame.
Give me the what's your argument again, and give me the verses.
Same chapter, verse 36. Some translation but about the day and hour, and the other translation but concerning. So like Jesus answers the first, let's see. He actually answers the second and third question. What will be the sign? So he answers that end of the age, but he actually doesn't answer the when portion.
Yeah, so instead of like making the claim, and then my follow-up question would be like, do you have like something to like substantiate that? He just went ahead and just filibuster. So I was just again waiting for him to be done, because he just loves to do this a lot, and just be like, hey, like is this not happening sequential order? So he has to appeal to other instances, which I'll talk about it, because like I never heard this, so I was like, kind of like letting it sit around in my mind for a while. But so apparently the chapters, right, of each particular book outside of Luke, they are out of order. But there's another claim that he has yet to make. So I asked him, as you just heard, is like, okay, so not only are these chapters out of order, but you're saying this specific chapter, those things, the contents in between the first and the last verse, those are out of order. Because that will actually become very problematic. Because I was just like thinking as he was like, you know, blabbering. But this actually proposes a whole lot of issues. Like, for instance, like baptism, we understand like the flesh and the spirit is being linked with the water, and of course, like being born of the spirit. We understand that those are very two different instances that has a lot of theological meanings. If that was the case, everything is out of order. In particularly speaking about John 3, then that actually proposes a whole lot of issues. So it also promotes a little bit of disorganization. And why would the disciples were like write a chapter, like whatever the content's in, and they will like purposely write things out of order? It's like there's so many questions, and this is like a new thing that I honestly never heard of. And later on, he keeps selling like all there's like scholars, like all of them. He's making like a history generalization there, but if you actually read any modern translation that have like these little notes to make that clarifying point, and if they don't actually include that as well, that could be very detrimental because it affects a whole lot. So this is such a wild assertion that he's trying to like cement, but I don't think it's a really good argument, because at that point it's just, if we're going to tackle on what he says specifically, that can actually be the case for Matthew 24. And you could see why, particularly the day and hour.
You mean the two questions? There's only two questions. There's only two question marks.
So basically, for that section, I had to cut a lot because, like, you know, he was just guiding me through. Apparently, these two passages, he's referring to the same thing, and like they're not done out of the order. But when I look into where he's makes like a note of Psalms 118, Jesus on two separate occasions quotes Psalm 118. That's what I see. So just because he is quoting something from the Old Testament, which we've seen old persons of the Godhead do this exact same thing, like Hebrews 1, where the Father is addressing to the Son, but he's applying Psalms 45. So in any type of context, even paraphrasing, he wouldn't, you know, in the aspect of the Father, would attribute divinity with somebody who is not the same being in the person of Christ. So I don't see that as like a sequential thing, like it's out of place, right? From what I'm gathering, Jesus is basically applying the Psalms to Jerusalem, and it's not really like I don't know what he's trying to get off, but all I see is Jesus really is directly quoting Psalms like he has done from beginning to end. I don't really see this as well. I'm still gonna give him the decency to read all these things to see if it holds up weight. But because of this, it doesn't actually stand up pretty fast. Like, that's like a very strange view. I mean, it could be possible. I'm not gonna automatically disregard. But if it's all contingent of him quoting Psalms 118 again, I don't think it's the same instance, or like this